Morning, everybody. I have something to show you this morning, but in order to do that, I need you to close your eyes, and I will tell you when to open them, okay? So everyone close their eyes. Ready? Hold it. Okay, open them. Can you tell me what this is? Anyone? Do you know what this is? Some of you may recognize it right away. It is a large cane for an incredibly tall person, or it's a shepherd's crook. Anyone guess that? Shepherd's crook? Yeah. This is a shepherd's crook, something that a friend of mine gave to me a number of years ago. And it is a reminder in part because the Bible talks about pastors being shepherds of the flock. And they gave it to me, and I love it. I have it in my office. And so every time I look at it, it reminds me that I am to care for the people that God has called me to lead, that I am to care for the people of His church. And it's also a reminder that the Bible uses this agrarian image of a shepherd and sheep to describe us and our relationship with God. And you see it throughout the whole Bible, in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Over and over again, prophets and Jesus and the apostles talk about how we are like sheep and God is the shepherd we need. Let me just put that down so I don't have to keep holding it for the rest of the message. But here's a problem for us. We live in a culture today that has very little understanding about what sheep really are. I mean, we understand what they look like. We've seen pictures about them, but we don't have them. We don't own a flock. We don't have a sheep in the backyard, or most of us don't have a sheep in the backyard. We have very little understanding about what sheep are, what they do, how they even behave. And when you add to that, one of the issues that our culture struggles with, the issue of individualism, the issue of my right to do what I want to do. And in our culture, that right seems to be one of the paramount rights that we hold to. It actually plays against our understanding of how sheep and shepherd interact. You see, when we have this belief and understanding, or have this foundation that where we believe that me as the individual has the right over everything else, where I can decide everything for myself and I just do what I want to do, it leads us into areas that are sometimes counterproductive. You see, with the rise of individualism in our culture, we've also seen a decrease in the respect for authority figures in our culture. And I don't think that's a coincidence. In fact, with the rise of individualism, what we've seen in our culture is that when we talk about obedience, that is a concept that gets laughed at. And let me illustrate this to you. When I asked you to close your eyes at the beginning, how many of you did it? My guess would be that many of you watching today probably thought that doesn't apply to me. I don't need to close my eyes. Why would I listen to Brent? I don't want to do that. And then there would be others of you who did, who listened to my voice and said, okay, I'm going to obey, Brent. I'm going to close my eyes like you asked me to. The underlying foundation of individualism is this: I know what's best for me, and I know what I want, and I even know what I need. And on the surface, that sounds like a wise decision. It sounds like wisdom, but it really isn't. I mean, it sounds wise because, who would know me better than me? Who would know my wants better than what I want? Who would know what I need better than me? That's the thoughts we have. And it seems wise in our own eyes. But today I'm going to look at this concept of sheep and shepherd. And I think by the end we'll realize that that viewpoint is not always wise. And that we actually need somebody outside of ourselves, someone to shepherd us. We are now in week 4 of our Reset series, and this series is a 7-week series looking at 7 statements that Jesus makes about himself. And this week, the I am statement is, I am the good shepherd. So I want to turn to John chapter 10, and we're going to read out of John chapter 10, verses 11 to 13 to start off with. Listen to this. This is what Jesus says. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. When the wolf attacks, the flock then the wolf attacks the flock and it scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. Notice a few things in this passage that kind of jump to me right away. The good shepherd is willing to give up his life for his sheep. There's a number of descriptors here. The good shepherd, in essence, exposes himself or herself to the dangers that are in front of the sheep. They're willingly putting themselves between the danger and the sheep. They protect it. And Jesus here contrasts that to the hired hand. The hired hand doesn't own the sheep, has no investment in the sheep. Their only investment is a paycheck that they get. And so when trouble comes, why would I risk my life? Why would I stick my neck out? And they run away. When things get hard, they disappear and leave the sheep to fend for themselves. The hired hand has no connection to the sheep, no attachment. The good shepherd, though, defends the sheep. The good shepherd does not leave them to the danger. Author Margaret Feinberg has written a book called Scouting the Divine, My Search for God in Wine, Wool, and Wild Honey. And for researching that book, she spent some time with a shepherdess in Oregon. And she found out a few things from that shepherdess. She found one thing that interested her was that we all know sheep aren't the most intelligent of creatures. But oftentimes what we look at and see sheep doing, and we classify them as dumb, because that's the statement, right? As dumb as a sheep. She said, oftentimes the behaviors that sheep are displaying when we think they're being dumb is really driven more because they're afraid. Because ultimately, sheep are defenseless. And she makes this statement, they are defenseless more than dumb. I mean, think about it. Sheep really have no way to defend themselves. They don't have claws. They don't have sharp beaks. They don't have sharp teeth. I mean, even the sound they make, bah, like who's going to run away from that? No one, right? I mean, this morning, so the last couple of weeks here at the church building, we've had like 4 geese take up residence on the property. And when I got here this morning to come into the building, there were the 4 of them standing at the office door entranceway. And I'm going, oh man. Because have you ever been in a situation where you come up to a Canadian geese and instead of running away, they open their arms and they start hissing at you and flapping at you? Like they're more scary than sheep are. Fortunately, I was able to shoo them away and get in. But sheep are ultimately more defenseless than they are dumb. Maybe you saw this story that came on the news in the last week about a sheep named Pickles. See, Pickles disappeared 7 years ago in Australia. There's a wildfire, and the fence that kept the herd in got burnt. And Pickles ran away, and when the fence was rebuilt, Pickles found himself on the wrong side of the fence. And the farmer didn't even know Pickles was gone because they had a lot of sheep. Until just a little while ago, they set up a motion capture camera, and at night they caught a picture of Pickles coming up to the camera. And then a few days later, they noticed this big blob walking out there, and I got a picture for you. And this picture shows Pickles 7 years without any shearing, just one massive sheep. Here's the thing. Sheep can't really take care of themselves. All they do is eat. They can't shear themselves. And there's other stories out there where sheep have gone missing for a couple years and their wool grows and then they get stuck. And they can't go anywhere because there's so much wool, they can't defend themselves. And if they're not found, they end up dying. Fortunately for Pickles, that wasn't the case. Pickles demonstrates to us that sheep need a shepherd. Sheep need someone to care for them, look after them. Perhaps the most well-known passage in the Bible about a shepherd is Psalm 23. Let me just read you a few verses from Psalm 23. Many of you may know this off by heart or from memory. Let me read it though. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Notice a number of things in this passage that make God a good shepherd. You know, it says that you won't lack anything. It says that God, the shepherd, will make you lie down in green pastures. He says that he will lead you beside quiet waters. He will take you out of the busyness of life and put you in a place where you can have peace. He will take you to a place where you lack nothing. He will take you to a place and make you lie down in green pastures and give you rest. He will guide you along the right path. And when you face darkness, when you face evil, you don't have to fear it because he is there for you. Let me show you that passage again and just highlight 4 words in there, or 4 little sections. It says, he makes us, he leads us, he guides us, and he is with us. All aspects of what a good shepherd are. A good shepherd, though, leads us. And here's where I think the struggle is for us, is that we will only get to quiet waters. We will only go down the right paths when we follow the Good Shepherd. And too often we're not interested in following anyone. We're more interested in going where we want to go. And yet for this psalm to be true in our life, David reminds us that the Good Shepherd leads us, guides us into these areas. And so should we wonder, should we be upset when we're not experiencing the quiet waters, when we're not experiencing the meadow, when we're not experiencing the green pastures, when we're not following God? Another thing that is interesting in this passage, and I remember one of my mentors pointing this out to me at one point, and talking to me, and he was talking about how there are times in our lives when we don't know, or we're not sure where God is leading us. We don't have any clear indication. And there are times when we don't have what we need, and we're relying on God to provide it, and we just don't see where it's coming from, and we can get anxious. And there are times when it isn't quiet waters, when it's bumpy, there's rapids, there's so many things going on, and we're out of our element, and we don't feel calm, we don't have peace. And he said sometimes those parts are true in our life, and sometimes we get to a place where all we have is the presence of God in our life. And as a sheep, when we're in those moments, we have to be comfortable enough with just having God's presence in our life. Even when we can't see him working in other ways in our life, even though we don't receive what we normally receive from God. Are we obedient enough, and are we trusting enough to be at a place where we're willing to go through life, even if we just have the presence of God in our life, without any direction of where he wants us to go? You see, the picture we get when we read Psalm 23 is this picture that a good shepherd cares for his sheep. It makes the sheep feel safe. When we don't feel safe, what happens? I think for most of us, when we don't feel safe, our level of anxiety rises in us. It leads to fear. And one of the best ways that we deal with anxiety and fear is to try and numb our senses. And many people turn to alcohol for that. I mean, it doesn't surprise us that during COVID-19, the sale of alcohol has gone through the roof. According to a Nanos poll that was commissioned by the Canadian Centre on Substance Abuse, since the pandemic began, 25% of respondents between the ages of 35 and 54 say they have started drinking more. And Bryce Barker, who's with that center says there are usually 3 reasons why people typically increase their alcohol intake. First one is a change to routine. Second one is stress. And the third one is boredom. COVID-19, I think, hits it out of the park on all 3 for a lot of people. It shouldn't surprise us that the consumption of alcohol has gone up during this time, because people are not necessarily feeling safe. They're upset with the disruption that they're facing. They might be scared. Or, if some are honest, they're just completely bored because all we're doing is staying at home. And so no wonder we're driven to something to numb ourselves. We celebrate Mother's Day today, and here's the thing when I think of a shepherd. I think mothers, good mothers, are a reflection of all the good aspects of a good shepherd. Right? I mean, a good mother is someone who protects you as a child. A good mother is someone who comes along and picks you up when you need to be picked up, holds you when you need to be held, leads you in the right way, teaches you and disciplines you and gets you to be an adult that is contributing to society and can go out on their own. And as you read Psalm 23 and you instead of having shepherd, put mom in there, and there's a lot of things that you would read in there. You go, oh yeah, that's a good mom. And many of you today have that type of mom. And that's why on Mother's Day, you're so excited to celebrate your mom, because what she means to you and what she's done for you. And when you think of your mom, you probably have these warm, fuzzy feelings where you just think care and compassion and someone who is always there for you. And yet the sad reality on a day like today, there's many people who don't like this day because they didn't have a good mom. Or maybe they didn't even have a mom. And instead of the good shepherd, they got the hired hand. The person who left them when times got tough. The person who put themselves ahead of their child and ran away or just ignored them, or lost themselves in drugs or addiction, or poured themselves into work, ignoring their children. And unfortunately, on a day like today, there are many who have moms like that. And today's a hard day. And many of you listening and watching maybe had a mom like that, and you had to learn what it was to be a good mom to your own children. And you made that transition, and you gave your children an amazing home. A good shepherd is someone that we're drawn to, someone that makes us feel safe. And oftentimes in our culture, in especially this 21st century culture and Christian culture, we equate shepherd with care. But that's not what Psalm 23 tells us is the only role of a shepherd. The Lord as the shepherd is someone who leads us. Let me read John 10, verses 14 to 18. Jesus goes on in this passage to say again, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock and one shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. You see, Jesus goes on and says a number of things in this passage. He says that because he's talking to Jews, he's telling them that the good news of the kingdom of God, the good news that Jesus was sharing them, that he was a shepherd. He was a shepherd, going to be a shepherd for more than just the Jewish people. He was going to be a shepherd for the whole world. And he was a good shepherd. And he was going to call into his flock non-Jewish people to be part of that. And so that's part of it. But the one thing that stands out to me as I'm thinking through and read this passage, these verses, is this. The good shepherd knows his sheep, and the sheep know the good shepherd. In her book, Margaret Feinberg goes on to share another lesson she learned about sheep and shepherding sheep. The shepherdess told her that you can get sheep to move in one of two ways. You can either drive them from behind, or you can go out front of them and lead them. But the shepherdess said this, whenever sheep are pushed from behind, they will respond in fear or anxiety. Pushing sheep forward produces agitation. But when the shepherdess goes out in front of the flock and calls them by name, they follow peacefully. She was quick to point out that anyone can get a flock of sheep to move by driving them. But to lead them from the front requires the sheep to know the shepherd. You see, sheep, in order to not move with anxiety or fear, need to be led rather than driven. And Jesus comes along in this passage, he says, the sheep know him. If we looked at earlier verses in verse 3, it tells us the sheep know his voice. The sheep know the shepherd. And so when the shepherd calls them, they follow. And Jesus goes on to give this example of obedience, and he gives his own personal example of the relationship between him and the Father, where him and this Father and God the Father have this amazing relationship because they know each other. But part of that relationship is based on the obedience of Jesus the Son being willing to do the will of the Father. Whatever the Father asked him to do, Jesus was willing to do it. And there was this obedience here. And it's the same with the sheep. When Jesus knows the sheep and he calls them by name, the sheep are willing to obey and follow wherever Jesus is leading them, wherever the good shepherd wants to take them. Before the advent of a lot of fencing, communities would often have a number of flocks of sheep. And so what they would do is they would build a pen where all the flocks of the community could come in at night and find security and safety in a walled pen. And you'd have someone watching that pen over the night just to make sure no animal came and took them. In the morning, a shepherd, to get his flock, would come to the gate, and he would start calling out to his flock. And he would lead that flock out, and only the sheep of his flock would follow him. All the other sheep would stay there because he was not their shepherd. Because the sheep of his flock knew his voice. One of the illustrations or the images we get when the Bible talks about sheep is this understanding that the best possible place for a sheep is within the flock. Whenever a sheep wanders from the flock on their own, that is when their danger increases. That's when they will walk into harm's way, when they're more susceptible to starve or get lost or even die because of a thief or a predator. The safety of sheep is dependent on their proximity to the shepherd. The closer they are to the shepherd, the more safe they are, because the shepherd will protect them. And it helps us understand this: sheep without a shepherd will not last very long. Sheep without a flock to be in, generally, except for pickles maybe, won't last very long either. And it reminds us, and the Bible talks about this, that sheep have a tendency to wander. Isaiah the prophet tells us that we are like sheep and we have all gone astray. Sheep naturally just want to go somewhere and leave. During this time of COVID, I think one of the reminders of us is how important the flock is. And why separation from the people we love and separation from the church we love is so hard on us. Because we are safer when we're together. We thrive when we're together, more so than when we're apart. And to have a flock first mentality is the thing that often saves us, but here's the thing, it can also destroy us. About 15 years ago, a story out of Turkey said this. The headline in the newspaper was this: hundreds of sheep follow their leader off a cliff. And as you read the story, you came to the place where it said that 400 sheep fell into a ravine, a very steep ravine. They fell about 15 meters, which is basically like jumping off a 3-story house. 400 of them fell off that and died because they followed their leader into that ravine. And what even was more amazing, the flock is 1,500 sheep, and here's what happened. All 1,500 of them went off the edge. But the first 400 of them cushioned the fall for the last 1,100 of them, and the 1,100 survived because they landed on the first 400. And you're going, how does that even happen? Here's what happened. The shepherds of this flock, and it was a number of shepherds, and so it wasn't with just one flock, it was a bunch of flocks together, decided to have a nice leisurely breakfast that morning. And so they were eating their breakfast, watching from a distance their flock, and one rogue sheep, started to wander. And the flock followed that sheep off the edge. And 400 of them perished. You see, sheep don't commit suicide. They don't knowingly, at any rate. They don't deal with despair by leaping to their deaths. But what sheep are is trusting. Sheep commit to a leader. They'll become so committed to following that they will follow that leader even at the cost of their own safety. And so when a leader wanders off a cliff, the sheep will follow. Which I think is a great question to ask ourselves. We need to make sure we're following the right leader. Who are you following? Who are you following? You see, we're all sheep. The Bible clearly labels us as sheep. And we are all in need of a shepherd. And in this passage, when Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, what he's telling us is this. That coming up, he's letting the disciples know that he was going to die. When he talks about laying his life down and then picking it up, he's talking about his crucifixion and his resurrection. You see, for Jesus, his death was not fate. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a tragedy. It was a plan. God the Father had set this plan in motion that Jesus would have to die for us to deal with our sin because we so easily and so quickly go astray. We go down not the right path that the Good Shepherd wants to take us down. We go down the wrong path. We get distracted by others. We get distracted by our own sin. And instead of following the Good Shepherd, we follow our own desires and wants. And so Jesus tells us in this passage that he was coming in obedience to his Father to lay his life down, to die for us because it was the plan in order to redeem us. But what he's also saying in this is that there is only one Good Shepherd. There is only one shepherd worth following. There is only one shepherd that can give you Psalm 23 type experiences. The one who will lead you into not having want. The one who will lead you into green pastures beside quiet waters. The one who will guide you down right paths. The one who will be with you always, even in the shadow of the valley of death. That is the Good Shepherd, Jesus. You see, each and every one of us are following someone today. Some of us might be following ourselves because we know what's best. Some of us might be following a philosophy, trying to figure out what is good in life, what do you want to take in life. Some of you might be following a parent or even a spouse. We all follow someone because we're all like sheep. We need to follow someone. Because in many ways, we are defenseless. We're not dumb. For some of you, you're being driven instead of being led. You're hurried, you're anxious, you're in fear. You're not listening to the voice of a shepherd. Someone's cracking a whip behind you. Jesus comes along and says, I am the Good Shepherd. And he models what it means to follow and be obedient. And the good news of this passage is this. Jesus wants to know you. He wants to be your good shepherd. He wants you to be able to recognize his voice when he calls you and leads you in life. And the only way you can do that is by coming to the place where you acknowledge who Jesus really is. That he's the Son of God, that he laid down his life for you to pay for the sins, for the wandering that you've done. He picked his life back up and was risen from the dead to show that he had the power over death and over sin. And now he's calling to you to follow him. And you need to make that decision to follow him. You see, Jesus, when he says, I am the good shepherd, this is what he's saying to you this morning. I will protect you because I will always be with you. I will protect you by giving you rest when you need it. I will lead you into the quiet places. I will lead you into the places you should go. I will lead you down the right paths that won't hurt you, that will lead to good things. I will lead you because I have laid down my life for you already. What do you need to hear from the Good Shepherd this morning? Let me pray for us. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for sending Jesus so that he could be our good shepherd. We thank you that when we understand that Jesus is our good shepherd, it means so much. It means that he will always be with us. He will always lead us. He will always guide us. We just need to follow him. That he will care for us. That he will never leave us alone. So Lord, on this Mother's Day, we are thankful for our mothers because when we have a good mother, they are a reflection of what a good shepherd can be in our life. And so God, we look to you and we thank you for the Good Shepherd. In Jesus' name, amen.